Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April monthly update. And I am the CEO, Derek Boyd, and this is.
I'm the President and Secretary of Metra, Vladimir Stakov, and let me tell you, ooh, what a banger of a month and future projections we have. We are, I have to say, this is probably the happiest we've been with Metra since, actually ever, because starting the company sucked as well.
Yeah, I mean, given the whole roller coaster nature of business and how we were like rock bottom just 2 months ago, ooh, we are on the peak right now, me boys.
Yeah,
it is looking good. You'll see that budget; it looks nice.
We have two major things to talk about that we're going to go into a lot of detail about because we do feel it's fairly important. One in particular is a huge one. And then we have four other like minor things to discuss that we'll go in a little bit of detail, but not too much, just to give a full update of what's going on and where we're currently at. So if you guys remember in the, so for the March update, we had talked about how we had started the eviction process on 108 due to them defaulting on the payment plan, and obviously the whole issue with the lying and whatnot that had happened when I came there to pick up the funds. Well, when we filed the court, the tenant, which they have all rights to do this, decided to go on ahead and demand an actual eviction hearing. Now, here's the thing. That annoys us, not necessarily because of the fact that the eviction hearing now has to happen. It's the fact that it's a waste of our time. If you know you haven't paid and you're that far behind, don't waste the landlord's time. So what I did is I literally printed out paperwork to go on ahead and also file a small claim suit against him because I already have to show up to court, so I might as well file a small claim suit while he's sitting there for the remaining rent that we still haven't got paid. And then we go to the court process, and on the date of the court, the guy ended up paying us $1,050 that day. When we sat down in front of him, we discussed everything that happened in court. Here's the thing with eviction court. The judge really doesn't care, except in the event of, did you pay your bill or do you have a good excuse of why you did not? So one of the excuses that he had brought forward is that he had to pay $1,100 to get the septic fixed months ago, and we were never informed about it, and he brought a receipt for $1,100, just saying like plumbing work or something like that on it. I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know what the receipt said. I just know it said labor and then the amount.
Yeah, and so obviously in that event, the judge is obviously going to side with the tenant and be like, okay, well, you guys need to deduct that off of the price. And we were like, well, Your Honor, we have no clue about this. We'd like a little bit of time to inspect this and make sure, obviously, something did get done and it was reasonable and not just like an egregious overprice or whatever else. So what the judge decided to do, and if the judge ever does this, take this, because he had money in hand that day. So like I said, we got paid $1,050, and then he was scheduled to, from 2 weeks from now, to also pay the remaining amount that he would still owe us after his next due date of $1,080 on the 28th. We're recording this on the 29th, mind you, of April. So he was supposed to pay this $1,080, assuming that we also gave him the credit of $1,100.
Yeah, so if we didn't have to give him that credit, so if we had followed up like we are getting to in a second, and we don't have to credit him the $1,100, it would have been $1,080 plus $1,100. That would have all been due the 28th.
Well, here's the thing, right? So as soon as that court hearing was over, Derek and I, being due diligent like we are, we went out there immediately, because the thing is, you can't do septic work unless you are licensed to do septic work, and we have enough problems with county as is. So to find out that a tenant supposedly got septic work done was a major red flag and a major concern to us. So we go out there, and the first thing he tells us is that the guy had dug up a pump for the septic and like just reconnected it without the pump, which made no sense, because what a sewage pump is, it's to pump sewage uphill, because the way plumbing works, that everything, the water and like sewage and waste always goes to the lowest point. And where the house was sitting and the way that the pipes work, that makes absolutely no sense to have a pump going downhill. That literally.
Plus the house sits like a good 2.5 feet up in the air, and then the ground also slopes downward, plus the septic is usually a good foot or so in the ground minimum. So you have the plumbing coming off the bottom of the trailer, then hanging down, going in this like hard arc going downward. There is no way in hell. It wouldn't make any sense for it to have a pump. Zero sense.
And so we sat there and we asked him, like, is this guy licensed? Because the thing is, once again, if septic work was done, and if it was done by an unlicensed individual, we're definitely not crediting him.
And to be specific, it has to be a specific certification from DHEC. I don't know if DHEC's in every state, but I just know what DHEC is here is like Department of Health, Environmental Concern, or something like that. Something like that, anyhow. Basically, it is a very specific agency that we have here in South Carolina that deals with anything that can be considered hazardous material or waste of any kind. This deals with, like, if you have oil in your yard, things like that, or like radioactive waste and stuff. It's the same general department. And so they have to be certified specifically by that department. They can't just be like a licensed contractor that deals with any other type of plumbing or anything like that, or has licenses in various forms of plumbing. It has to be a specific certification for that, because it's considered hazardous.
And because of that certification is usually why plumbers are so absolutely absurdly expensive as well, especially if they have to run anything dealing with the actual septic, because if they mess it up, they have liability insurance and everything else that have to cover for damages that it could cause, because in worst case scenario, DHEC could literally condemn the land, not the home, the land, because it's too contaminated, and they do this off of like soil samples and stuff like that, meaning that that entire land is now uninhabitable for people to live in, or that portion of land is considered uninhabitable for people to live in. Huge issue.
To give you a small example of what could happen, right? Imagine a small child is running through the field and then they fall into the collapsed septic tank. They fall in there, say they had cuts or bruises on them. Then they get an infection from the actual leftover waste, human waste or whatever. They get sick and maybe they have to get their leg cut off or die, right? That's a massive liability.
Or God forbid they get hepatitis B, hepatitis C, or something like that. Good luck.
And now they have reoccurring medical expenses for the
rest of their life.
So that's the reason why DHEC is such a big deal when it comes to anything with like waste, and that's why you can't just have a general licensed contractor or even certain plumbers handle it. You have to have a very specific certification because of this exact hazardous issue.
Understand, like changing out the septic lines, like dug around and things like that, that's totally fine. Anybody can do that. You just snip the lines, put couplings, glue it, put it back together. Done. Very simple. It's specifically the actual tank that is the problem. Even running a line to the tank is fine. It's if you're dealing with anything specifically with the tank is where there's a problem and you need these certifications. So he starts off telling us that this guy is certified. Then he tells us that he's not. Then we're sitting there and we're hounding him because we cannot figure out what was actually done, because he was saying that the ground was dug up and things like that, and we looked at both potential places where the septic tank could have been, and the ground literally looks like it hadn't been touched, it hadn't been dug up, nothing had been done, and we were just like, look, we need to figure out the situation like now. We don't have time to be playing around.
I don't think we mentioned it earlier, but basically the judge gave a 2-week extension from the day that we were there doing the actual hearing to the day that it was due. So since he was due the 28th, we were, you can do back math over here. We went to the hearing on the 14th. So basically, we went out there on the 14th. We were like, hey, we need to get information of exactly what's going on. We need whoever did the work. We need to find out exactly what they did. We need to see the invoice. We need to get any type of evidence so we know exactly what happened. Otherwise, we may have to go ahead and reach out to DHEC in advance just to give them forewarning that some potential work may have been done illicitly or illegally, and that we can go back and rectify it. To this day, we still, this is once again the 29th, so it's been 15 days, we still don't know what was done, and I can go into more detail on that in a minute, but let him finish his point.
Yeah, and it was just absolutely absurd, because the thing is, well, actually, to further on to what Derek is saying, like, we had no clue what got done. Nothing looked like it got done. We're being told that septic work got done by somebody that was unlicensed to do septic work, and believe you me, I don't care. I will throw that person under the bus immediately to cover ourselves, and then I'm going to pay to have somebody else come out there and do whatever it was properly and make sure that it's taken care of, because I'm not eating the costs and the fees of it, and I sure as hell will not be reimbursing somebody for doing that. And we asked him to give us the number that day to the guy. The tenant didn't give us the number that day. He didn't give us the number the next day. He didn't give us the number the third day. We reached out to him all 3 days. And then finally, over the weekend of that week, we finally got the number. Then Derek...
It was a week and 2 days later. We met with him on a Thursday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was not the Saturday after that. It was the Saturday after that. So it was roughly 9 days later he gave it to me. And so, obviously, I can't call the guy on the weekend because it's not open. So I called him on Monday. didn't answer. Called him on Tuesday, didn't answer. Called him on Wednesday, finally answered. Talked with him, and he said he had to pull up his report because some other guy had come out there, and he said the name of the technician or whatever that came out and did the work. And then he said the only thing on his notes that he could see is that they didn't do an actual repair. The only thing they had was they charged him for labor for literally digging up the drainage line. And once again, I want to remind you, it was $1,100 that this idiot paid
for digging up drainage lines.
And I'm like, why the heck would you pay $1,100? First off, you can literally go rent a backhoe from Home Depot for like $300 for 24 hours. And then say you pay an extra $100 in like driving and gas, right? For like the actual backhoe. Dude, come on. That is 1/3 of the price that you paid for these guys to physically out there dig. No wonder they charge you so much.
But what makes no sense is that he was telling us that he's the one that dug to reduce on their labor costs, and they're telling us that they had to go out there and they had to dig it. What was done?
Exactly.
It makes no sense. Nothing is adding up.
They still didn't tell me what they got fixed. He doesn't even know what got fixed. Nobody knows what got fixed. And we still don't even know if there was a problem to begin with, because then I once again was following up with the tenant saying, hey, once again, we cannot give you any credit towards this whatsoever until we know exactly what the problem was and what got resolved and if it was done correctly. And I followed up with him yesterday, because yesterday once again was his due date, and he was telling us about payment. I'll get to that in a second. But basically the main thing was I was like, look, man, we still don't know what was done, but the main thing is I still don't even know what the problem was. And then he keeps, the day that we were there on the 14th, when we followed up after the hearing, and then pretty much I didn't hear anything from him until about yesterday, where basically he kept doubling down that he told me what the problems were, that he sent me pictures of his toilet backing up, that he told me about all the smell and stuff in the house, and that it was obviously a septic issue, and that I even told him that I agreed with him that it was a septic issue. And I said, how would I have told you that I agreed that it was a septic issue if I'm still asking you for what the hell's the problem? I don't know what got fixed, and I never would have approved, because I know how DHEC laws work. I would have never have approved for you to have a general contractor go out there, and especially I never would have approved somebody go dig a line. Ever. And so he's like, yeah, but I told you. And I'm like, okay, when exactly did you tell me? Find me a time and a date, and I'll look it up in our text message records, because he texts everything to me, especially when there's a problem. Sure enough, he says somewhere late January, early February. I go and I take a picture of our screenshots from every single conversation we had for about a 2.5 week period, sent it to him, and said there's not a single picture nor a single mention of you having an issue. The only thing that we had in that 2.5 week period was him falling behind on rent, because eventually we got into that payment plan, which happened in February.
And I don't talk to the tenants at all. That's not my job. Exactly. Derek's the one that handles it all. There's no record of this. And I find it very funny that it got brought up in court.
Yeah.
And of course, it would be something that would go against us, obviously, for a payment amount, which, again, is fair. There's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the Landlord-Tenant Act. But there's no proof of what actually is getting done or what happened or what actually occurred. Because the other thing is, if you're a licensed contractor, what you have to do is you have to take photos of before and after in every bit of work that you got done for your insurance. Yep. So that way, obviously, can validate that you did good work and that it was either a freak accident or whatever else, and make sure that you are covered in the event that something goes wrong. So, needless to say, on the 28th, he tells us that, hey, I got my check coming in today, and then we still have not heard anything about the payment.
And then the other issue is that because I have specifically been dealing with him for almost a year now, every time he gets a check, because I've pretty much figured out he doesn't have a bank account, he just goes and gets his check cashed at a bank. Well, they will physically hold his check for like 2 to 3 days, business days specifically, and then they will release the funds to him, and he goes back and picks up the actual money. So even though he got his check yesterday, supposedly, he still wouldn't have had the money until maybe like Tuesday.
Plus, I've heard this before where Derek tells me that he got his check and that he should be making a payment within the 3 days that Derek talks about, and then it's 2 weeks later, and then that's when a payment actually gets made.
All the time. There's a reason why he kept falling behind. So we were like, look, man, minimum you got to pay the $1,080 by yesterday. Maximum, we're going to find out on Monday when the judge is back in the office. We're going to go ahead and file the writ of ejectment now because he didn't pay, but we were going to follow up with her and find out about that credit.
And understand, the judge did side with us, even though there was that 2 week delay, But what it was that it was one final attempt to try to keep the tenant in the home and for them to catch up, which for us, we had no issue with that because we're protected, because if they don't come through and if they don't pay, the writ of ejectment's already good to go, and now they're officially evicted. For them, it's beneficial because it gives them more time to sit there and try to come up with the rest of the funds and then secure themselves in the home, and then everything stabilized back out and go back to normal. It was a win-win situation, so we didn't mind doing it. However, we kind of had a feeling this was exactly what was going to happen. So needless to say, we're going to be getting 108 back. Obviously, we're going to follow through with the writ of ejectment on Monday, and then we're going to finish that out and take care of the rest of that. Do you have anything else to add on 108? Because I think that's everything.
Other than, we're pretty sure we know what supposedly got fixed, but we'll get into that way later on in the conversation here.
The blunder that Derek and I both committed. I'm going to be honest here. So, if you guys remember last month, we talked about how we got 138 lot rented, right? Derek and I actually committed a major blunder on both of us with this entire situation. And this is a prime example of being a landlord and not going too fast or getting overwhelmed with the amount of properties that you have. So, to give you guys an idea, I only advertise 3 properties at any given moment to try to keep our volume down. We may have 4 or 5 available, which they'll be up on the website, but I will only advertise 3 at a time to keep everything like calm and to keep everything in order for what Derek and I are doing, obviously, as we're proceeding through all of our properties. Well,
real quick to clarify, because previously in the past, we used to have like 5 or 6 properties available at one time, and we would try to advertise it, and it was beyond overwhelming. We're talking like 200 plus calls a day, plus emails, plus Facebook messages, plus all stuff. We were both working like 18-hour days, and then we would mix up who was calling about what property. It was, the records were terrible, so we learned.
We would also sometimes mess up contracts and stuff like that as well.
So we learned we can basically handle, between the 2 of us, efficiently 3 properties at a time. And then once a property is sold, we immediately throw another one up. So we'll keep 3 on rotation at all times.
But we'll always have them up on our website, so that way it shows everything that we have available. It's just we're not actively advertising it on Facebook and Craigslist. Well, unfortunately, this was one of those situations where we were just going too fast. So let me tell you the first mistake we made. When it came to these people and on the lot rental, they told us that they had a tiny home, everything else like that. Okay, cool, not a problem. It was supposed to be 2 adults. The first mistake we did, we forgot to do a background check. I know, seems dumb, but somehow both of us didn't consider to do a background check. And then as I was typing up their lot rental agreement and then obviously send it over to Derek for approval to make sure that it was what it was supposed to be, we still never once thought about doing a background check on these people. So what ended up happening with this is that this is all over the course of like 4 or 5 days, in a sense, from the moment they moved it in.
From the day they moved, the night they moved it in.
The night
5
they moved
days
it
late.
in.
All this was in 5 days.
So they moved in their tiny home without getting a permit from the county. What this is that anytime you're moving anything like that outside of like an RV, if it's an actual structured home, you must get a permit from the county to move it in, and then that permit will further into like electrical permits and stuff like that, so you can obviously get your unit set up.
Basically, so they know what, like with a car, like a VIN. Most mobile homes and stuff will have VINs as well. They know what VIN is now going to be attached to what land, so they know whenever they need to like add electric or any of the other liability and stuff or insurances and stuff, they know what VIN is technically supposed to be responsible for all these, adjustments that they have to make in their record.
Now, I'm sure you're wondering, how do you guys know that they didn't get a permit? Very simple. The home was literally a foot away from touching the power line where it was parked. Like the power line itself, like from the actual poles, it was a foot away, and if the wind swayed enough, the power line would literally be hitting the roof. And then we also called and confirmed with county.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious a permit was not pulled because county will dictate and specify exactly how it needs to be moved in when a permit is pulled to actually do it. So that was the first issue, but whatever. They obviously, it's a tiny home. They have abilities to move it. They can move it themselves. The night that they move in, And
No, it's the next night.
I'm sorry, the next night after we see that they had moved in.
They were in there for a whole 24 hours
Yeah.
apiece, and then it went downhill.
They had broken into the unit at 136. Now, if you guys remember, that was the unit where we had that gentleman who had that unfortunate event with his wife, and we gave him a fair partial refund for him to basically terminate agreements with us and whatnot. They had broken in that unit and had ran an electrical line from that unit out to their building.
They busted the window.
And busted the window to do so.
So they busted the window to break in, to then plug in an extension cord, to then run it to their mobile home or tiny home.
And the former tenant there still had some of his belongings there, and he had reported that he was missing things because his stuff was rummaged and ransacked. And sure enough, when we went out there and we looked, it was rummaged and ransacked. Well, when we came out there, we didn't go out there that time, right? We just told them, call the police and everything else. The police show up, and they apparently hid in the woods because we were on the phone with that former tenant. And then as soon as the police left, he saw them coming out of the woods, called the police on them again, and then they ran away and hid for the rest of that day. Okay, pretty suspicious. And Derek and I are like, all right, we'll handle this in the morning. And so we try to reach out to them. We try to get a hold of them. Can't get a hold of them whatsoever. Have no clue what's going on. All right. So night 3 rolls around now, right? And we get reports from the tenants that are down at 118, the other owner finance tenants we just got in there, that they saw those people coming out of 124, the one that we didn't have rented yet, and that they were pretty confident they saw them smoking a crack pipe out in the open. And we're just like, okay, call the police. Police show up, couldn't find them, anything else like that. And then we get a report that night that they had again broken into 136 and had used the bathroom and everything else like that, and were like rummaging through the stuff. Was that right? Yeah. And so Derek, go ahead.
Remember, we had just had the police out there twice the night before. They then hid in the woods. They went back in there because obviously that night they had the backing it all back up. So the tenant that was still getting his stuff out at 136, that he was out there that night, obviously he saw the busted window and the extension cord. So obviously when the police were out there, they removed the extension cord and tried to patch the window and whatnot. So now they didn't have any power. So the next night they tried to get back into the home to re-steal the power. So that's why they were in there again.
And so this time Derek and I are livid. So we like suit up. Like usual, I sit there and I bring my guns, I get one to Derek, and we're starting to clear every single unit. We cleared 136, we went up to their unit to see if they were there. We turned around and we went to 124, and we cleared 122, could not find them anywhere. We were absolutely livid. And so then what I did was that him and I made the decision, because this is ridiculous, and it's very obvious that there was no problems in the park whatsoever until these people showed up. The second they showed up, within 24 hours, problem after problem after problem had started happening. Pretty clear indication of what was actually going on. So I write out an eviction notice, telling them that they need to remove themselves from the park. If they're not out of here by Monday, we're filing an eviction suit against them, and that we're also filing a suit against them for any and all damages they've caused to our park, because obviously they were breaking into units that were rightfully ours because nobody was staying in them and nobody was renting in them. And then we get to this dumbassery, which is the greatest, best argument you could possibly make. And we also realized our third blunder with these people. So the lady that we had been emailing contacts Derek and tells him that we do not have agreements with her, and that if we file an eviction against her, that she will sue us for putting it against her record. And Derek was like, really now? We don't have any agreements together? And she kept saying that the only agreements we had was with this other gentleman that was supposedly living there, that was his tiny home, everything else. And we're like, we don't have any agreements with him. Our agreements were all with her. All conversations were with her. Everything was with her.
And to clarify one thing too, when we were initially setting up these agreements with her, this guy with the tiny home was paying on her behalf, and she made it pretty well aware of that. Plus, it was the same phone number that they had put on the contracts when they had signed them, and so we knew that it was a direct line of whoever is getting the whole unit at some point, whether it's the lady or whether it's the guy, whoever it is, one of them is involved on both ends
Mm-hmm.
regardless. So we knew that going into this that they were in fact together. But then she states that, once again, her contract is null and void from the beginning because she never paid for it. Any payments that were made on her behalf, she never...
Were done illegally, and she didn't authorize.
She didn't authorize them.
And this is all in
Yep.
writing, by
Yes.
the way. She's doing this all in writing, and I'm like, really now?
Yeah. And then,
really?
and
They're
then, like,
all illegal.
And then, like
really?
she said that any agreements that we would have had would have been with him.
Which
not
we
with
had
her.
none.
We had none. So we were like, go.
And so then I came up with this idea. I was like, wait a minute. If we have no agreements with them, if we know they didn't pull the permits to get here because we have no agreements with them, I was like, we're free and clear. We don't have to file the eviction.
Mm-hmm.
That's illegally parked on our land. Tow that shit out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the kicker, right? Before we go into this next portion, Derek pulled up the contracts. And sure enough, she was 100% right. Because they had forged our agreement. The agreement that we sent them was not the agreement that we got back. They literally forged our agreement, because when Derek sent an online agreement, what he was doing is that he was signing it already and sending the full agreement. So all they have to do is just sign it, it's ratified, and it's good to go. They changed. Yeah. I'll show it here, by the way. What we sent versus what they sent back.
So the reason we do this is because if they put payment in advance, then we make sure that we go ahead and give them the contract so they can get permits pulled. Well, once again, they didn't actually sign the correct agreement, and like he said, he'll show you the before and after, like what we sent and what they actually gave back, and basically it was
illegal as hell. It was forgery. It was a crime. If those contracts would have been considered valid, that would have been legal as hell, because there's no record of us ever negotiating differences. So prime example, on the agreements, we always put everything month to month, even lot rentals. They had it set at $200. They had it set at 12-month agreement. That's not what we do. Another thing is that the fonts are so different for the way that I write them out, and it made absolutely no sense. The security deposit section didn't have 0 written into it, like I always do, and then 0, 0. It just had $0 in the section you're supposed to write it out, and I have years,
and then there's
years of contracts
about
proving
the section
this.
where we fill out for, like, if we cover the trash or the water or something like that, and they wrote something in there about they're covering water and trash, and it's like, we have checkbox. We always use checkboxes.
And then the kicker of them all was that the rent was written as $300 a month. I would have put in $350 because on the lot rentals it's a $50 late fee if you pay late. It would have been $350 because you get a discount of $50 or 10%, whichever is greater, like we do with all of our rental agreements. That was not the contract I sent them. Once Derek pointed that out, I even have more justification. I was like, tow them out of there. Monday morning, we gave them...
this all was going down, so we went out there physically, guns drawn on Saturday, and put up a notice. Then Sunday was
the argument.
Was the emails back and forth.
And the realization of the forged contract.
Yeah. And so then this is now Monday. We tried calling Sunday morning, but nobody was available. By Sunday, I guess Sunday night.
Sunday
Monday
night,
morning.
yeah.
So like 1 o'clock in the morning, nobody was available. So we waited till about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we told them specifically, if you can get your shit out of there by noon, then we won't move forward with any charges of any kind. Just take your crap and leave, and don't bother our tenants, and don't cause any problems. Well, we gave them till noon, and we had called a couple tow truck companies to go out there and just kind of give us, because they had to go and look and see if they could move it or if they had the equipment to do so. And so we called a few to go out there and inspect it and see if they could. And sure enough, one guy could, and it was beyond noon. Guy gets out there around 1, rips it right out and drives down the road.
Rips it out, impounds it, gets rid of it. I contact him, confirm it. I tell him thank you and everything else like that. And then we walk away from it from there. Then these people had the balls to show up at the park, and they started threatening to kill our tenant at 120.
No, 134.
134. They started threatening to kill our tenant at 134.
Light him on fire.
Light him on fire.
And
his family and everything else like that. And I'm just like, are you serious? Like, You think this is fine? And then the woman reaches back out to Derek, demanding that he sit there and he pay the impound fee and blah, 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 and then changes her entire story of, we had an agreement. Yep. You can't do this. You have to file an eviction. You have to do this. I'm going to go down to the magistrate. We're going to sue the shit out of you, blah, 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 blah. And then Derek is like, I welcome it. I bring it on with your forged contract that you sent back to us, literally slip sheeting Derek's signature on the bottom of it after you made all these altercations and changes, which I have years of the way I fill out our contracts. I mean, I have years of proof. You don't change habits. That's not what happens. You stay with the same habits. Whenever you're filling out agreements, you always do the same thing every single time. Why? Because you get into a routine and a pattern that's very easily arguable with the hundreds of contracts that I have. And these people think that they're going to sit there and get away with this. And then we sit there, we call the police, and as soon as the police get called, of course, they yeet themselves out of there. And then they...
oh, by the way, it's always convenient. Every time we called the police, they would leave 5 minutes before the police arrived. So it was very clear that they had some type of police scanner.
Mm-hmm. And so the other thing was, too, is that we sat there and we got a call the next day after that.
Real quick. So we confirmed with the police because they were obviously following up, trying to get information on what was going on. And they were even like, yeah, you did this completely legally. Like, we see no problem with what happened because from what we can understand, first off, why do they keep running and why not confronting the problem? And secondly, she's like, you got a licensed company to move this out. And so they do have the right to get their material back whenever they can. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, so we're not withholding it from them. We didn't steal it and put it on our
it's not
land.
like we took it, put it on our land or whatever. No. We got it impounded, which is what you're supposed to do. We gave them more notice than we legally had to.
Yep.
And once she confirmed we didn't have agreements, and then we actually confirmed, oh yeah, we actually don't have any agreements on two fronts. We have her agreeing that we don't have an agreement, and then we have the forged agreement that we got sent back. Yeah, you're totally right. We have no agreement.
Plus, they illegally placed it there anyway because they didn't have a permit.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, once again, we supplied all the information over to the police for the tow truck company, and then every time that the other two couples were arguing with me all throughout Monday evening, the dude threatened to beat me up like 10 times. So anyway, he was like, I'm gonna come to your house and beat the shit out of you. And I was like, sure, come on. anyways, point is...
Very good negotiations.
Yeah, I know, right? So anyways, so basically we got done with them at that point. We were like, okay, now that we've gotten everything clarified, everything squared away with the police side, and then we got to obviously reach out, talk with, maybe the magistrate tomorrow. But that evening, they were flipping out on us saying that we stole we stole their stuff. We got to pay the bill to get them back to them. And I'm like, no, I'm not paying that. It's your problem. We gave you till noon. And he was like, you got to give us 72 hours. I'm like, that's only if we had an agreement. You illegally placed your property on our place, and so we got it towed. And so all sort of stuff. And then basically we were just like, yeah, we're done. I was like, look, man, if you want any further contact, please reach out to the Sheriff's County Department. And then I was like, they have all the information of exactly where it got towed to, how to get it back, and go forth from there. Because we've known since we've kind of had our blunder with not doing a background check, they probably have a warrant on their background, because every single time the police were out there for anything, they ran. Like, I mean, they were gone. So basically,
and the police have records, by the way, of every single time they've been called out to a particular unit and when the last time was. So you're seeing 5 calls in a 3-day period about the same damn place and unit. It's very obvious what the situation is at that point.
So, long story short, they go to the magistrate judge the next day. Magistrate judge calls me and was like, yeah, so what's going on? I was like, well, based off of her opinion, her word in writing, she said we didn't have any agreements, we didn't have any contracts, same thing. Our agreements
were forged, so absolutely we had no agreements.
And they illegally placed their property on our land without getting a permit prior to, and so basically the judge was like, well, the tow truck company can't just steal their property. I said, oh no, they didn't steal it. I was like, it is legally placed there. They just have a mechanics lien on it. So whenever they try to come get it, they just have to pay off that bill, and it's fine. If they don't, then it goes to an auction. And she was like, I guess the judge didn't know how this worked. And I'm like, yeah, this is completely legal. I was like, imagine the same thing happened if somebody left their car in your property. You have all right to get it towed off. It's legally allowed. And I was like, but I'll do you a favor. I'll follow up with the tow truck company. I'll find out what the fee is, and I'll make sure it's reasonable, because they were saying it was like $2,000. And I'm like, that does sound pretty crazy. Normally it's like $300. And so I called the tow truck company guy, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no." He's like, "This is considered a public expense." He's like, "Because this isn't like you were asking us to move your private property from one place to another. This is considered the same fee that we charge for, say, if like the police had like a cruiser that got like destroyed in a car wreck or something, they had to get it towed, or like, you know, any other state requirement. This is the fee that they charge them, and so it's like $495 per hour." And at some point he mentioned, he's like, "Even though I'm only like 10 minutes away from your park," he said, "as soon as I got it out of your park and drove it about 3 minutes down the road, the entire back axle came off the trailer." So he's like, "I had to basically rig it together to put it to where it could just barely, you know, like lightly getting it down the road at
like 15 miles an hour."
And so he said it took an additional like 2 hours to get it down the road. Then on top of that, I had to get it and set it back up over at my lot. So he's like, the whole time of it was about 4 hours. And so it's 4 times $495. So he's like, it's about $2,000. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, either way, it's not my problem." So I called the judge back, and I was like, "Yeah, it's $2,000." And she was like, "Okay." I was like, "Yeah, just tell them if they have any problems with it, they can always seek out, you know, legal advice or an attorney or something like that, and they can take it up with the tow truck company. But this is irregardless to what we have."
And then here's the kicker. I call back the tow truck guy about a week after all of this, just out of curiosity. Like, "Hey, did they ever come pick it up?" And he told me that, yeah, they actually attempted to, but they can't provide any legal proof that they actually own this.
Yes.
I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, the axle, it has a serial number and it's titled to a completely different person than either one of them." And when I asked them if they could provide me like a proof of purchase, like anything validating that it's theirs, they can't. And he's like, "So this is just going to sit here because I don't know what to do with it, and I'm not going to release it out to them because I think it's stolen."
So to this day, in like 3.5 weeks, it's still there. It's about to
Because
it
might be stolen.
So
listen, I'm going to be honest again. Derek and I royally screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah.
We were so busy and dealing with so many other bigger things, like bigger units. Like the whole lot rental thing just slid under the radar for us completely. And we should have done the background checks. We should have validated the agreements. We should have made absolutely sure that everything was done to like our proper procedure. But we were in a rush. We were trying to just get things done so we could focus on other bigger things. And we messed up. There's no ands, ifs, ors. Luckily, it worked out very well in our favor. Because like I said, I welcome a lawsuit against this because there's no way in hell we are wrong on what we did. We followed everything to the letter of the law and also went by what she said herself and the fact that our agreements were forged back to us. Yeah, no, I'm very confident and feel comfortable in this situation. It's just, it is absurd that it even happened. And the people I feel bad for are our tenants.
Oh, yeah.
That they had to deal with this bullshit for the 3 days that it was going on. I genuinely feel bad for them.
Especially the one tenant who had his life threatened.
Yes.
I
have zero tolerance for that.
He has to go to sleep every night. He really can't control where he's living at the moment because he can't just like up and leave. And so at any point in time, some other person who he has no interaction with, because, you know, we're landlords, we're the ones that send people into the homes to live there. He can't control like who's his neighbor effectively. And he's got this guy literally at any point in time in the middle of the night could just light his house on fire. I mean, it doesn't take long to go out there with a tank of gas, surround the house, light a match, walk away, and now your house is on fire. It's not that hard.
It's disgusting, man. Like these people that we had at 138 are literally what I would define as the scum of the earth, like the lowest of the lowest. And I feel so genuinely bad for all of our tenants that had to suffer because of these idiots and what they sat there and what they did. From the bottom of my heart, I genuinely apologize. That was ridiculous.
Luckily, since then, we've had no other issues, and all of our tenants have been like, "Oh wow, it's been very peaceful lately." And I'm like, "Thank God."
In fact, Derek and I actually went back out there a separate night. We picked a random night to go out there in the middle of the night and did another vagrant check on all of the properties and just double check everything and make sure that it was still safe and like patrolling. One of the other tenants actually caught us. They were asking us like what we were doing. We're like, "Oh, we're doing a full-on vagrant check. We're making damn sure that there's peace in this park again because I'm not letting that happen again." So yeah. lesson learned. It sucked, but it's not the end of the world. We were able to get it rectified within 5 days. I think that was the fastest turnaround time to getting a bad situation resolved in landlord history.
And it would have been less than that, but unfortunately it went through the weekend.
Yeah.
So they moved in on like a Wednesday evening, and then it was like Thursday broke in, Friday they broke in, and then like Saturday.
No, it was Thursday.
No, Thursday.
Friday,
yeah, Friday.
because Saturday was the night we came out there guns drawn doing clears.
So anyways, we got them yeeted out Monday, so yeah, it would have been quicker. But it is what it is. Luckily, it's been resolved. And once again, they only came out one time after the fact to pick up some of their leftover debris and stuff. That was because, like I said, when the tow truck company came out there, they just hooked it up and ran it down the road. Yeah. Didn't even attempt to like try to clean up anything. No. They just said, "Yup, there's a nice little tongue here. Hook it up to the hitch. Yeet."
The idiots drove over the septic tank.
Oh, that was the other thing too. When they were moving it in, the septic tank is right there.
It's a horseshoe driveway. It's covered in leaves now, but it's a horseshoe driveway. And what you're supposed to do is that on the left side of the tree where the horseshoe is, that's where the septic tank is. You're supposed to pull any units on the right-hand side and back it up that way into the lot over there.
And to clarify, the septic is under the power line. Both of those sections are supposed to be blocked off to where you're not supposed to park it. And they drove it over the septic tank and parked it. Literally, here's the septic. Like, I mean, what is it? Like, maybe a foot away? I'm not kidding. Like, here's the front of the trailer. Here's the septic tank. Like, literally that close. Like, legitimately in my hands. They drove it over it, parked it, like, right next to this. I'm surprised they didn't park it on the septic tank. But they parked it next to the septic tank and then directly. So it was like a foot under a power line and a foot away from the septic.
That thing was a matched tinderbox waiting to happen. It was either going to collapse our septic tank and go into the ground with it. Now we have that issue to deal with. Or it was going to catch on fire by the power line above it.
Oh, yeah.
Take your pick.
It was a disaster. But
so,
luckily...
yeah. It's been, outside of that, peace. Quiet and calm, and believe you me, for rental, Derek and I will never forget to do a background check again when it comes
now
to
every time
rental.
when it comes to like rentals, we're like, "Did you do the background check? No, I didn't do it. Did you do it? Yeah, I did. Okay, are you sure? Can you pull up the record? I need to make sure." We've been like triple checking every time now.
Yeah, big oversight on our end. So remember, kids, even lot rentals, too dangerous not to do a background check when you're renting. If you're doing owner finance, those quality attendants are usually a lot better candidate. You can get away with not doing background checks and things like that. Do not do it with lot rentals or rentals in general.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so now we're kind of into our four minor points that we're just going to kind of go over. So, as you guys know, we had to claim abandonment on 946 John Hart. We mentioned that, we didn't mention that last video, right? That we were starting the abandonment process. Yeah, abandonment. Yeah. So we started the abandonment process, obviously, on 946 John Hart. Yeah. We did have to go through with the abandonment and finalize it, and we started advertising it. We had a gentleman who's presented us a very interesting deal. I'll let Derek go over the deals, but what we got him on contract for as of this moment is he paid $3,000 down, $450 a month for.
It's the exact same.
$460, and for $40,000 total is what he's going to be purchasing it for a total purchase price. But there is a little bit of a caveat with that because he's looking to potentially actually just buy it outright faster and sooner, which Derek has the details on those, which would be a huge benefit for the company.
Basically, he's on the exact. We didn't do anything because the previous people had kind of hit or miss. They kind of ruined the house a little bit, kind of made it a little bit better, I guess. They were in the middle of doing some remodeling, and so they brought materials, which is good, but they also just kind of did a bunch of demolition, which is bad. So we were like, look,
demolition without replacement or fixing.
And so we were like, look, man, we're not going to go up on price, given the fact that the market has literally skyrocketed in the last year. I was like, we'll just give it to you as is at the same price that the previous people were paying. So that's why he's on the exact same agreement. $3,000 down, $460, $40,000 total. But with that being said, he specifically just wants to buy it outright. He's been kind of teeter-tottering on it because it's significantly cheaper for him, obviously, if he does buy it outright. And he wants to do that so that way he doesn't have any issues because, long story short on him, he's actually a family member of the person who originally owned it when we bought it back last year from that whole probate issue that was going on. And so he didn't want to buy it then because He doesn't like dealing with family, hates it with a passion. Smart guy, because it's ironically a month later after we dealt with the previous people with a mobile home.
18 Eagles view.
Yeah, so it was really funny that it was like small world, right? It was like 3 weeks later, this other guy was like, I never deal with family. We were like, funny. Should have talked to this other dude a couple weeks ago. Anyways, but so he's like, I hate dealing with family, and he's like, I didn't want to have to spend all the money dealing with court fees or legal or anything like that. Plus the fact that if I would have bought it directly from family, they would have figured out that they were in some way obligated to something. He's like, I didn't want to deal with any of that.
He basically just let probate run its course and literally just allowed us to buy it without doing any kind of contestation, because he just did not want to deal with it.
And so when he found
out, how many people were involved with that house? Like 6?
Oh, it was a lot of people. Yeah. So when he found out that somebody else had bought it and that they were looking to sell it again, because the only way is funny as hell. The only way he found out was because he literally, this one main strip of road, I'm not kidding, is like, there's like 8 houses here, big patch of forest, and like another 10 houses down here. And he's got like a cousin here, a mom and dad here, like an aunt here, a sister over there. Like, I'm talking like half the entire road is his family. So he's always up and down that road. Well, 2 days after we had put up the notice, before he'd done the video, or 3 days after the notice and put up the video, he actually had tried to reach out to me, except he got a hold of my neighbor, because we didn't put our phone number on the
abandonment notices, because the tenants would have that obviously with the lease. We never thought about putting that up there.
But we had put my address, and so when he called, Tony Googled it and tried to find out what my phone number was. He actually called my neighbor, and my neighbor was like, I know who my neighbor is. It's his name, but it's not my property. I don't know what you're talking about. So eventually she came over like a couple days later and gave me the phone number, called him, and then we started negotiating a deal. Anyhow, so that was the whole reason why he was interested in the house and why he paid for the price he got into. But the reason he wanted to just pay for it cash is because it does need a lot of repair and work, and obviously if he can just buy it up front, he can save on that financing fee that he can then put into the home to then get more money back out of it, whether he lives in it, rents it, sells it, whatever. But the problem is that he doesn't have all the money up front to do both buying it from us and going ahead and getting it into a position where it's not like basically an instant teardown. Because it does need the electric being rewired, specifically the breaker at minimum. Some of the wiring and stuff might be okay, but it's still pretty old and corroded in some areas. So
the well needs to be either the pump needs to be replaced on the well, or it needs to be hooked up to city water and sewer.
And then on top of that, it may need a new septic tank, because the septic tank looks like it might be backed up in some way. So with those expenses alone, it could be as cheap as, depending on what routes he goes in and what has to get done, it could be as cheap as like $7,000 something up front for all those repairs, all the way up to $15,000, $18,000, depending on how much labor and cost are required. So when he saw that, he was like, ooh, I don't have the amount of money I need to pay up front plus those fees. So he's like, what I can do is I could potentially finance it for a very small period of time, and if you guys are willing to, at a later date, I can buy it off of you. So at first he tried to lowball us with a straight up cash out fee, which we were like, look, no, we can't do this. This is too low. We have way too many other offers that we can work with. So then he was like, okay, fine. So then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do the financing amount now, so that way I can get it on contract. I don't have to worry about somebody else stealing it. And then he's like, are we able to negotiate a sale price at a later date? I said, absolutely. All it is that the longer you're in it, the more money you're paying to us until you get to your payoff period, and then we credit a different amount, just depending on how long you've been in the house. And so basically he was like, okay, so then here's the deal he just recently gave to us, which we're going to go ahead and sign with him on this one, even though he's already on the $40K financing fee. We're still willing to do this because, once again, it will help the company. So basically he's looking to pay a total of $27,500 for the purchase of the home, and he's willing to do this with a 60-day closing. However, in the event that he can't do it, so for example, if it is like $18,000 to do all those repairs, and then he's got to come up with the rest of the money to pay us off, which he's paid so far $3,000 and some change up front, so we'd have to pay the other part of this is that he has to pay $10K up front, and then the other $17,500 at the end of the closing. He's already paid us $3,460, which means he had to pay another $5,000 and something, $5,460, something like that on top of that. So then basically he'd have to pay that roughly $5,500 plus any of the other repairs and maintenance, because he wants to go ahead and start working on the home during those 60 days. And so that means that theoretically, in the course of like a 60-day time frame, this man's gonna be coming out like $40,000. And so he's like, I just don't have that much money right now. And he's like, so here's what I'd like to do is like, can I commit to the payment up front of the $10,000? And he said, and one of two options. Can I still make it to where I'm on a finance agreement with you. We just changed the credit amount because obviously what we have on the contract right now is that I paid $3,000 down for $60 a month. Well, if I'm fronting up another $5,500, can we change the financing on the back end? I said, of course. We have no prepayment penalties. Whatever you pay in advance, we can either just sit on it and you don't pay us for a while, or what we can do is we can just go ahead and renegotiate the prices down because obviously you paid up in advance and there's no like renewal fees for like a year or two and things like that. And then still give him the option to close in 60 days. So if he does, then we will have the full 27.5. If he doesn't, then he would have still got it a reduced credit and amount, so it won't be the full 40K. It would be a little bit less because obviously he's paid in advance some. Now the reason why we're considering this is because one, worst case scenario, he's on a 40 grand contract. We literally just didn't skip a beat from the previous tenants to the new ones. Best case scenario, we get 27.5 up front and we can immediately go and buy into another property, or potentially catch back up on some of our back debts, or, for example, say we get real lucky and we get into another 18 Eagles View court situation, right? 27.5 is almost 2 of those. So, of course, we'll take those. And, you know, not saying it could happen, but that guy did have specifically 3 properties. So if he's willing to sell those other 2 that he had for the same price, we would absolutely take that deal. Not saying he would. We haven't really been in contact with him since, but you never know. You never know what's going to come down the road. But the idea is to take the cash up front when you can, because then you can always multiply that into multiple investments to get your income back faster.
And our mentor taught us this principle very early on. He always told us, take the fast nickel over the slow dime.
Yep.
And that's what he always said. In the long term, it is more financially beneficial as far as what we will make off of that property by just financing it out, doing our typical owner finance route and everything else like that. But what can we do with that cash if we get it ahead of time? We're not losing any money. We're still making a profit if he sits there and if he takes it off, plus the profit we made off the previous person that was financing it from us beforehand. We're still making a profit. But then we're now making a bigger profit with it if he comes out with the cash buyout, and then we just can reinvest into something else. Don't be too greedy about it. There's always other investments that you can come up with and like you can have. There's only a certain time, usually during a crash, like literally in the middle of the crash. Do not get rid of your assets in the middle of a crash. You want to eat up and buy as many assets as possible. But after that crash is over and it's like skyrocketing back up, hell no. Sell things off and then get into something else and just keep rinsing and repeating the system. You'll make more money in the end doing that. That's why that principle makes sense for us. Do you have anything else to add on John Hart?
No.
Okay.
Give or take right now, we haven't exactly signed the additional addendum yet.
We're scheduling it out.
We're supposed to be meeting him at some point next week. So next video, we'll let you know if he's actually going to be committing to that deal. And then from there, 60 days is when he has to close on the rest.
Next thing. So we did sit there and we did resell 136, the one that we had talked about earlier. This one was a bit interesting. So what we do with these is that the person didn't have a full down payment. Same thing like we did with 130. We put them on $750 a month rental. I'm sorry. 700 a month rental, and 150 of that is going towards earnest, and towards like towards a down payment, and then the other 550 is just being regular rent. These are beautiful deals to do because number one, you literally just have them as a regular renter. There's literally nothing. It's just a regular rental agreement, and then you're just in the back end, you're just back rolling that money. And the thing is, if they default, if they don't come through, great. If they do come through, great, because the thing is that time frame, because for them it would take them 13 and a half months before they would have the down payment amount that we would need. None of that 13 and a half months will get credited. So it's just free rental income. It's dumb not to do these kinds of deals if people are willing to offer it and they can afford to do so. It's again that whole principle of work with people what they have. Don't be so hell-bent and stuck on what you're asking for and what you want. And this is a great deal overall for us and for them, and it benefits everybody involved.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you got to think of it from their perspective, right? It's a great deal because think of it like this, right? Say
and they're allowed to go on ahead and pay in advance to pay up the earnest, but they don't have to.
So that way they can get the credit faster. But basically, you got to think of it like this, right? Imagine you can get into any house you want, but instead of you having to have a down payment, you just pay a little extra monthly. So you see a $100,000 house, right? Normally they require like 10-20% up front. That's 10 or 20 grand. well, if you don't have 10 or 20 grand, but instead of paying like 500 a month, you could pay like 800 a month, and then the bank would just take the $300 credit and just put it towards the down payment. Yeah, of course you take that deal.
Yeah,
Well,
the
that's
thing is,
effectively what we're doing.
yeah, and obviously, yeah, it's not going to get credited during that time frame, but so be it. You're able to get into this house with very little effort and without having to frantically panic about trying to put all your funds together, try to get into something, and then you might be getting into something you don't want. If you want to get into it, this works out for everybody involved.
Not to mention,
beautiful deal.
In this particular case, they were literally bleeding because, like everybody we seem to keep running into, they're all living in a hotel or a motel. So they were.
We are cheap.
We are way cheap. So basically, they were paying about $1,200, $1,300 a month in a hotel cost. We're literally half of that with our additional $150 fee on top of it for the down payment portion. So basically, what they can do now is they can start catching up on the amount of money that they're now saving to put it towards that down payment. Versus if they were in a standard purchasing agreement, they would have to sit, bleed, say they only make $1,500 a month. Well, they have $200 extra on top of their, whatever they're paying, $300 extra, that they have to still pay for food and gas on top of whatever they're paying for the hotel to then eventually save it up and put it towards the down payment. They'd be sitting in a hotel for like 3 years.
And it sucks too because you're bleeding the whole time, and with that money you could have been saving or getting into something yourself. Then prime example as well. Are you good with 136? Yeah, another one, beautiful deal here, 124. So we finally got that one financed. If you remember, that was the one that we had that one tenant in that took us 5 months to evict, and he ransacked and ruined that place, unfortunately. So it just sat on the market for ever.
It felt like ever.
Yeah, it felt like
it's one of our longest ones. It took about 2.5, 3 months.
And we're offering it financing we were only asking a total of $12,500 total for it. So yeah, it's set forever. Well, we actually ended up getting a couple that paid $1,500 down, and then $450 is their monthly that they're paying for it. And they're looking to renovate it, get it all set up and coming for them because they have a baby on the way, and so they're looking to get everything stationary and good to go for that house. Which again, awesome. I'm very happy to hear that for them, and obviously we're more than happy to work with them. Plus the cost of the house is so cheap. It's ridiculous. What they even were asking us is that if once they finish paying it off, if they would be allowed to literally trade in that mobile home to get another mobile home and put it back on that same lot. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. I was like,
that makes our park look way
better.
Like,
why would I say no to that?
Up. It's like if your neighbor suddenly builds an addition to their home, it makes your house's property values go up. Of course. We would love for any of the people that are buying our mobile homes to just tear them down and put a new one in there if they want to.
If that's an actual legitimate option, I'll do that the second these homes are vacant.
Yes.
I don't like we told you guys before, we don't want to throw people out. Like, we can make a lot more money and be a lot more aggressive if we just started throwing people out and replacing their homes and whatnot and so on and so forth. But that's not morally right. You can do that legally, you can do that, but that doesn't make it right, and that's not fair to them. So, but as we get more of these homes vacant, I'm actually going to start looking into this trade-in policy with mobile homes. I'll happily take a loan on another mobile home, trade in the one we have, then slowly upgrade the park that way. That's dumb. Why would I not do that? But anyway, so that's something that they were discussing, and that's something that they were talking about, which again, phenomenal, great thing there. Obviously, that increases our monthly finances as well. And now the big one. You guys remember about 2 months ago or so, how Derek and I had to physically go out?
No, it wasn't even 2 months. Well, yeah, it was almost. It was like the end of February, early. It was in the March video, I think. It was like very beginning of March.
Actually, yeah, because we talked about firing our contractor.
Yes, it was last month.
You remember how Derek and I went out to the mobile home park, made some repairs, fixed that guy's water heater, then put on a shutoff valve for 124, and took care of all 3 problems that have been a major issue in that park
in like 13 hours.
Yeah, 13 hours, which the vast majority of it was just us running back and forth to the store.
Like $180, like $200 or less.
We'll say $200. We got our water bill in, and Derek had to call to confirm that was all water bill.
Because I was like, they messed up. They only put 1 month on here. That's how low. Just give you a heads up. I thought it was 1 month, and it still confused me. So keep going.
So as you guys know, our water bill has been $2,000 a month.
$2,000 every 2 months.
The contractor that we had was absolute useless poo garbage and couldn't fix any of these problems, and we were bleeding that $2,000 every 2 months consecutively over the course of the time. Our water bill came in, and it is 700. How much?
It's like $760.
$760. We only fixed 2 houses. $760 is our total 2-month water bill for that park.
Remember, we were at 2,000.
2,000 every 2 months. $1,000
In fact,
a
it was
month.
slightly going up. It was like 2,100 the last time. So we are exactly almost at a third of what our bill was
Now,
for the last 3 payments.
while this is beautiful and I'm ecstatic and happy about it, I swear to God, if our contractor had anything worth like suing for, I would be filing every single water bill that we got while he was employed under our services for the fix that we did in one day. Disgusting. We paid more to the water company than we were sitting there and paying him monthly.
Yes.
We lost, Eric did the math, about $3,000+ over the course of those water bills compared to what we should have been paying for.
I did the math. If we would have fixed it 6 months ago, when we got the first, like before we got our first $2,000 water bill, we would have saved $3,740 something, which, if you don't know, was exactly almost the number for property taxes. We literally would have had a free entire park and all the mobile home property taxes just in water bill savings.
Absurd. Absolutely absurd. Great news. I'm so thankful
Financially,
and happy
we've just
about that.
skyrocketed because of that.
But God, man, it also irritates me at the amount of money we spent in stupid tax. Any competent contractors watching these videos, please reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
If you have proof of your work that we can physically see and you're willing to do a couple of test runs, we're willing to offer you free room and board and pay you to work for us. But we are not dealing with another shitty contractor again. I am so sick and tired of this. So yeah, great news, phenomenal news. And now I think that's a perfect segue for our budget, which it's fan.
Yeah, this is the best.
It's quite fan.
I'll go with this.
Okay.
So our budget this month is by far the largest we've been in since we've had the company open. So, as you remember from last month, we finally are going to include the new mobile home we just bought, 18 Eagles View. So that payment we had gotten in the last video, like I said, we weren't going to include it in that one. That was going to be technically included in April's budget. So we do get to factor that one in now too. So our budget alone just went up about $500 plus. But on top of that, we also had a couple little things, like you said, back rent due for us. We got that at the hearing when we were meeting with for 108.
A little bit of it, yeah.
So we got a little bit of money there. So that was nice. And then of course the big ones, which are all the down payments for stuff. So with that being said, 18 Eagles View Court, $665, 946 John Hart, $3,460, 641 Barnwell, $400, and then surprisingly, everybody at the mobile home park paid this month. We didn't have a single person not pay, which was impressive. So 104, 440, 108 was the 1050 we got at the hearing, 116, 425, 118, 500, 120 was 425. 124 was, remember that down payment amount plus, was 1950. 126 was 420. 130 was 650, which was same thing as you mentioned before, which was like the agreement we had last month. It's the same one we're doing for 136, where they're paying an extra, if I remember correctly, theirs is $100 extra a month for their earnest amount that they're eventually going to accrue into a down payment. So they paid 650. 134, 400, and then the same thing I mentioned earlier, 136. We actually got 770. I'll clarify why, because we got the 700 from the people that were like buying into it. We also had the people at 118. They put a 1 week hold on it because they were thinking about possibly transitioning from 118 to 136. So they put a 1 week hold, so they paid $70 for it. Mm-hmm. So we received 770 total. So with that being said, that's a lot of money. We got a grand total of income of $11,555. Oh yeah. We got basically like a person's paycheck for the year if they were like on minimum wage, almost. Because that would have been like, I think 13 or 14.
This is why you invest, kids.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
But this is why you do it.
Oh yeah. So we got a fat amount of money this month. I remember we were already getting a fat amount of money from last month too. So last month we had like whatever we had on that one, and we had spent 15 grand. And then this month we basically covered all those costs. So we're doing gold. Now with that being said, we do obviously add some expenses, but they're really not that high. They're the same as usual. The 108 water bill, $2,100. So once again, that was the last time we'll be paying, theoretically, until another potential water leak happens, that we'll be paying $2,000 plus. Now we'll be down finally to that $700 plus range. So that's really, really good news. But we did pay the $2,100. Then we have the $1,953, which is a typical mortgage. Then just regular credit card expenses for just things like cell phone and random other stuff. $575.85. That includes like gas, which gas prices have been ridiculous. Then we have the eviction fee of $40. Next week it'll be an additional $10 for the writ of ejectment, and then just other little stuff too that we always have in there that I just like. I usually include it in the divvy fee, but we had to separate it because divvy screwed us. Where they dropped our fee down, so we have it on other credit cards now. And that's things like our phone plan that we have for like the business phone. That's our website, and then we also have a coffee subscription that we have with Panera. So with that being said, total now is $4,745.41, which means we have a grand total net of $6,809.59.
Yes!
Oh! Yeah. So we had, not only did we have a good month last month when we were net, minus the 15 grand that we put down. This month was a back-to-back net, and it was way higher. So we have already been 2 months in really, really, really good. Like, really good.
Gonna be praying to that divine entity tonight, baby. Yep. I'm ecstatic about it. I'm not gonna sit here and say like we deserve this or like we earned. Well, I would say we earned it, but I'm not gonna sit here and say we deserved it. But we have had to cross a lot of hurdles to get here. And now the beautiful thing is our projected monthly, each and every single month. No down payments, nothing. Just our pure raw projected monthly. Because we're going to go on ahead and assume we can rent 108 at least at like $750 a month easily. I'd be blown away if we can't.
Which I do have potentially somebody who's want to move in there and finish out some of the flooring and stuff that needs to get done that the other guy never did. And they're looking to possibly move in there for around $900 a month, which will be another $100 on top of what he's already paying. Mm-hmm. And then we're gonna make it very clear that they have like 30 days to get their floors done, otherwise they're out. But anyways, with that being said, that's assuming we even go with them. With that being said, our actual net for just the Metra portfolio is roughly $2,800 a month. Assuming two things, it could be a little higher. The only two things I don't have is that's 2,800. I want to clarify without anybody in 108. So with 108, it'd be 2,800 plus whatever 108 produces. So if 108 produces another $800 tenant, then it'd be 3,600. If it's another, if it's a $900 tenant, it's 3,700. Right? So I kept it separate just in case, because I'm assuming we're not getting 108 for right now, and then we'll figure out what the new person is. But yeah, so theoretically, we should be somewhere around 3,000. Well, this also assumes we're still getting the 460 for 946 John Hart, and the guy doesn't just pay cash up front for it. Mm-hmm. So, but either way, give or take, we're 2,800 plus. Mostly because the water bill's reduced. Remember, we're saving $1,300, give or take, just in the water bill.
Creme de la creme. So, to get back into it, I have to say, Patrick Star, Employee of the Year. If anybody doesn't understand this, remember, SpongeBob can teach you a lot more than you think it can. His infamous quote of just take the problems and push them somewhere else.
Bikini Bottom. We paraphrase a little bit.
We paraphrase a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, insert their own problems in there.
What is it? Artist interpretation?
Yeah.
Works. And look, all joking aside though, man, what a great month. What an awesome time. This is a great time for all of our tenants. This is a great time for all the new people that we got into the owner finance program. This is a great time for everybody involved. If they just follow the process and trust what we've laid out for them, it's going to be a beautiful win-win for everybody. For us in the long term, because we'll still get lot rental if nothing else. For them, because they can obviously get the homes that they want and get like good stable places instead of having to constantly worry about rent or these jacked up, hiked up rents and so on and so forth. It's just It's awesome, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved so far, and obviously what we're offering to other people as well. And it's a good time. We're gonna have a good time.
Good time.
So yeah, that's pretty much everything I got. I'm ready to wrap it up, but I'm just looking forward to an even bigger and better June. Even if it's a relaxed month,
June.
I don't care.
Damn, you skipped a whole month.
Oh, I'm sorry, May. Yeah, I'm looking forward
He
to the
just
whole
checked
May.
out
Yeah,
already.
I checked out.
He's like, it was too high. It's too much.
It's already good.
Yeah.
We'll just skip the June.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and just coast into the June. I'll mentally get back in.
I'll see you guys in June.
Yeah, do it. Do the next video is just me. Like, where'd the
then I'd see you guys in June.
Yeah, but no,
But yeah. That's all I got, so I'm ecstatic.
Cool. Well, outside of that was, like I said, one of our greatest months. We've been back-to-back wins, so hopefully we can carry that over with the momentum into May. You know, the actual next month, not June. But yeah, outside of that, appreciate it, guys. Thanks again. Check us out in the next video. Peace.
Peace.